And here with me now is Julie Swann, head of the NC State Industrial and Systems Engineering Department. Julie, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So this is the second time the state has been able to move up the vaccine timeline. What does that tell you about where we are with vaccine supply?
Well, supply has been increasing, and that's great. We do also have a third vaccine that's now been approved, so that also increased the supply. But we know that all of the manufacturers are working throughout their supply chain to make sure that they can get as much as they can out the door.
And where do we stand with additional supply challenges? Are there still obstacles out there?
There are still some obstacles. That Johnson & Johnson has said that their production is not going to be as fast as they had hoped it was. There is going to be a partnership rolling out with Merck, but I think that will take some time to set up and become fully operational. But we do know that supply is increasing, and we now have a forecast of what's coming over the next few weeks.
And so those with pre-existing medical conditions are part of Group 4, but they were originally part of a much earlier group. Why do you think that there was a change?
Well, we saw that shift come from the federal government. There was advice in January to start moving down the priority list and go more quickly and really begin with different age groups that had not been in that priority group initially. So we saw some of those shifts occur. There's also clearly a priority on getting essential workers vaccinated since they are at greater risk of exposure. And now we're also addressing that challenging group of reaching all the people who have high risk medical conditions that would put them at higher risk for severe outcomes.
And so as of March 17th, about 20% of the state is at least partially vaccinated. How much further do we have to go until we may reach herd immunity?
Everybody wants to know that, right? We still have a long ways to go. What we know about the infectivity of this virus, and also because once we get back to normal, there'll be more traveling and moving around, we're need to get to a high level of protection in the community. 70 to 90% is what we think is true for that. So, there is a push to, first of all, get all adults vaccinated. And secondly, there are now some trials that have shifted their ages down to look at these vaccines in children as well.
And you had mentioned having 3 shots will help us get there. You talked about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We know North Carolina received more than 80,000 for that first round of shipments, but the next round won't come until about April. Do you know what happened there?
Well, I think that Johnson & Johnson had been preparing their production in anticipation of coming before the FDA for approval. And so they had stockpiled some vaccines, but then they did have some glitches in their system. This happens when you're ramping up from basically zero to, full levels. And so that's what has happened. It has slowed down. They will get some of those things worked out, just as we saw with Pfizer and Moderna back in December and January.
And there are also reports that in April, the U.S. could possibly greenlight the AstraZeneca vaccine. What impact would a 4th vaccine have on supply?
That would significantly increase supply. The U.S. government has committed to purchasing 300 million doses of AstraZeneca, which clearly not only would that help cover all Americans, but would also help cover them sooner, because I think that they have also been preparing their supply chains. So that would increase the supply as we are going to this large group 4, as Dr. Cohen said, and then group 5, which is also quite large.
And you had mentioned earlier clinical trials for children. What impact would being able to vaccinate children have on what's going on?
Children have fewer severe outcomes, such as hospitalizations and deaths, than adults do, but certainly there are some who have had severe outcomes, and children can transmit the virus to others, such as in their household or others that they come in contact with. So vaccinating children will help give the entire society more protection, both the children and the people that they come in contact with on a regular basis. I'm looking forward to when my children are able to get the vaccines.
Well, Julie, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insight on this topic.
Thank you for having me.